Hi, I'm Anthony, City Backyard Veggies. I've had the call made from the kitchen. We need more ginger. So what I'll be doing today is actually harvesting this year's ginger crop. Now I've been trying to grow a whole year's worth of ginger every year so that we don't have to buy it. And I'm hoping this year I have grown just enough. And if you can just see what I've done at the moment, I've actually grown a lot of my ginger in pots. And as you can see, plants are starting to die back, so that's, for me, is a good sign that they're ready to go. I've grown 7 pots worth, and I found that growing them in pots works better for me. I can move them around, get them out of the wet, and previously a lot of them had rotted in the ground when I planted them in my beds, so pots are the way to go. I'm going to come through and harvest the whole lot today and just clean up and get them ready for the kitchen. I'm hoping that I've had better success in my harvest this year. Last year I did grow a very similar arrangement, ginger in pots, but I found it overcrowded the pots with multiple rhizomes, and as a result the plants, their roots can only grow as big as the space you give them. So I'm hoping I put individual rhizomes in each pot, I will get much larger gingers. Just going to harvest the first one, and what I'm going to try to do is actually try to save a lot of this soil so that I'm not throwing on the ground. I'm going to put it straight in the garden. You can see there's my beautiful rhizome, as you can see there. Just giving it a little bit of a wash, and you can just see beautiful, good size. There's the original right there, and the rest of it, it's probably length of my arm, length of my hand, sorry. I started my ginger crop in late October last year, and I do find that you do need that long 8 to 10 month period to grow decent ginger. During the growing period I made sure they were well watered, and putting them in pots allows me to control the amount of watering they get, because if you put too much water on ginger they tend to rot, and that's what happened to me the first time I tried to grow some. For the growing medium, at the time of planting I used equal parts of cow manure, potting mix and seed raising mix, just to make it a bit airy, and I found it actually worked quite well. There was enough nutrients in the soil to grow the gingers, but also during the growing period I did give them a lot of liquid fertilizer and a little top up of dynamic lifter pellets or chicken manure pellets, so it really does help to fertilize your gingers as they grow. And really important to keep the water up to them. They are very water hungry plants. There you go. This is my second season of growing ginger, and I find that ginger doesn't need too much depth in soil. They can grow quite well in relatively shallow soils in your pot, but the key is, I find the bigger the pot the better. They do need the space to get the larger rhizomes in. So if you can get, this is a 25 or 30 centimeter pot. These are the ones I've been collecting over the last few years, and I'll be using these again to plan out next seasons. Just finished harvesting that ginger. Got myself a nice big container load. Giving them a quick wash just to remove that soil, and I've pruned off the leaves of these plants so that I can take them inside for storage. Now the larger ones, as you can see, stuff like that, that's going into the kitchen. So what I'll be doing is I'll be removing a lot of the roots and just giving it a nice final clean. These will be used throughout the year. Got a lot of smaller ones, and these will grow in my polystyrene container. I'll be using these as next year's seeds, essentially, next year's plants. So I'm not going to be taking the roots off these. I'm going to be letting them dry off a bit, and I'll store them somewhere dry and out of the sun. And then in about 2 months time, so I'm looking at early to mid-October, I will plant these rhizomes out again. One of my main aims in my garden is to try to grow those veggies which are expensive and we use all the time. See if I can grow a year's supply and get them in the kitchen. Ideally, I don't know if this will last me that long, but I'm glad I've got a fair amount of ginger to go into the kitchen. So just moving on from the ginger, and I'm going to go to my north facing beds over here, and I've decided I'm going to move on the onion patch that I tried to plant out here in the garden. Look, I planted this out in actually quite late in April, and I thought this was too late, and I haven't really done much, and I've decided that I'm going to move it on. It's all overtaken with chickweed. Going to move it on, and I've been asked to plant out a little bit of leek. Went and got myself one punnet, and I'm going to be planting this out in this patch. Now, generally speaking, I like to plant my leek early in autumn, so February, March. And I have planted out this late before, and it has produced, but it does bolt quite quickly, and it does go woody. So the idea here for me is to actually plant this out and harvest them while they're still young and still relatively small in diameter. I'm going to be removing all this chickweed, all going to the chickens, and I'll amend the soil and I'll plant out the seedlings. So I've just dug over that soil, removed all those weeds, and I put down a barrel load of homemade compost, and I'm going to add a few amendments before I plant them out. I'm going to be adding chicken manure pellets, a little bit of dolomite lime, and a bit of potash. I'm just going to spread that out. Probably don't need that many amendments at the moment for leeks, but I am thinking about what I'm planting here in spring, and I want to get those amendments in the ground early. Now, I find with leek, like all onion vegetables, you can separate them pretty easily, and you need to separate them to plant them out. Just really taking it out of the punnet, and you can just be quite rough with them. They're actually not too precious. What you can do is you can either remove them by hand, or what I prefer to do is actually just wash the soil off the roots. And there you have it, individual plants ready to go be planted out. Now, when it comes to planting my seedlings, what I'll be doing is dibbling with the back of my trowel. Just a really deep hole, actually, just go at least half the length of the handle, about every 10 centimeters apart. Now with my seedlings, get them right there, just separate them into individual plants. And what I'll be doing is I like to cut some of their roots, just to make it easy for us to plant them out. Now, it's quite sunny at the moment, so they're starting to wilt a bit, and essentially just putting them in the hole as deep as possible as you can. And I'll just bring it in closer and show you. I've just literally dug the hole, put the seedling in, and just left it at that. I'm not going to cover up the seedling, just going to leave it like that at the moment. Once they're planted out, the idea is not to actually cover them up with soil. What you want to do is the soil to gently fill it up so you can get a larger white stem. So what I do instead, container of water, and just fill up that hole. And what that does is that the soil will drop into the hole, and it's just enough to fill in, just enough soil around the base of the plant. Don't want to do anything more than that, just enough water to fill it up, and the soil will eventually just come down and fill up around the base of the seedling. So over time, over the weeks, as I'm watering those plants, as they're getting bigger, more and more soil will fill in that hole, and then you end up having a larger stem with more soil around it, and that will give you that white stem when it comes to harvest. Just finished planting out my leeks, and you can see it's got myself 3 rows, probably about 40 plants in total. Now I still do have a few more, and I might just find spots in here, may even put it on the last row here in this spot, but I think that's plenty. Now with the soil, you can see it's just filled up the hole once you water it in, and that's plenty. And over the next few weeks, I'll keep watering it, and as the plants grow, the seedlings, that hole will fill up and it'll cover up the stalk. Now these look like they're a bit worse for wear, but over the next few days, these will bounce right back. You can't kill leeks, you can't kill onions. So happy that's all planted out, and I'll give you an update over the next few weeks on how they're going. Back out at my leek patch, and overnight they settled in. They're looking okay at the moment. Just going to give them another water this morning just to make sure. It's been quite a hot day today, just make sure they settle in. I did plant this morning when I came out here another round of pick and go lettuce. I actually have interplanted pick and go lettuce all the way across this bed here. This is my jalapeno, overwintered jalapenos, and while I'm waiting for the spring to come and they start growing up again, I've planted a few lettuces. Now I like leaf pick and go lettuce, yeah, and once you get them going, you can end up harvesting a lot of leaves, and it's actually pretty nice to have that fresh leaf in your fridge rather than buying the pre-packaged ones from your supermarket. So these ones, I've had my first harvest on the weekend, and these here are still about a week away before harvest. Coming over to my next job, and it's time for me to harvest my coriander patch. Now, this is a coriander patch that I planted from seedlings that I pre-germinated in a tray, and I planted them out individually. And the whole patch is quite large at the moment. I've been picking a few for meals, but generally speaking, I've got to get rid of the whole lot. There's going to be some big rains coming in this week, and I'm first of all anxious that the rains are going to damage and going to essentially kill off these plants. But also, we in my family tend to harvest coriander whole, and we freeze it for a lot of Lebanese stews and dishes. And I'll be giving this to my mum so she can process it. She'll just chop it up finely and freeze it, and then use it in a couple of dishes that she makes. So I promise that I'm going to grow her year's supply. This is the first batch, and I'm going to start another one shortly. But what I'll be doing is just lifting the whole thing up, roots and all. I didn't want it to get this long. The leaves are actually quite long, and I find that if you plant your coriander in autumn, it won't bolt. So this will bolt now. As it starts coming into spring, this will bolt. But at this stage, this will continue growing. It's actually, the leaves are starting to get a bit too long. Just using my fork to lift them, because I want to take them roots and all. I don't want to break the seedling. Just going to lift them like that. And as you can see, beautiful. Actually, this is the length that I want. I actually didn't want them to get any longer than this, but there are some definitely larger plants in there. Yeah, I'll just continue just lifting the rest. I tend to grow my coriander in my patch in that autumn time, so from March till May. I will be able to plant, I will try to plant some more now, but I find as you move beyond the shortest day of the year, I do find that that coriander really does respond to daylight hours lengthening, and as a result it will bolt quickly, so you won't get a proper formed plant before it bolts. So if you're going to plant coriander, try to get it earlier in this season rather than later. Now you can plant later, like what I do, pull them out whole, and you can probably negate the risk of it bolting. You just harvest the whole plant whole. But if you are coming to pick and go, get it planted in early. That way you're harvesting for most of the period before it goes to seed. So as a grown coriander, it's the classic: heaps of water, heaps of fertilizer, prepare the bed with a bit of blood and bone, and making sure that I give it, as it starts settling in, a monthly application of dynamic of power feed, and that really helps the plants thrive. Just did a first pass process on these corianders, and all I've done is I've just bundled them up into bundles of 10, a little bit of an elastic band around the base, just giving them a bit of a wash just to get that soil off the base of the plants. And looking amazing. There you go, beautiful bundle. End up getting 7 bundles of coriander. I really like being able to grow coriander this nice. I'm going to let them just drip dry a bit at the moment, just to get rid of some of that surface water. I find that if water stays on the leaves too long, it starts going a bit soapy and a bit slimy. So it's going to dry them off, put them in my container, dry them off, take them to my mum's house tonight just to get them processed. And at the bed itself, what I'm going to do is actually try to plant another round of coriander in this patch. I'm just going to direct seed it this time. I'm just going to dig it over, just a little bit of more compost in the bed, and probably try to get at least a packet full in this space. And before I wrap up this video, I've got to quickly do some work on my citrus tree, specifically my mandarin today. The big rains are coming, so I want to get my fertilizer, disused fertilizer for the tree, in underneath the tree, so that these big rains will help it start soaking in. Just a quick wrap up. I'm trying to clear the rest of the mandarins. This has been a great season for it. Beautiful fruit. I have harvested most, and having the supports that I showed a bit before really made sure that the branches didn't break. Now, underneath the plant, underneath the tree, I've got a quarantine area around the base, which I'll be adding my fertilizer, and I just make sure it's remove all the weeds. They don't like the competition, so all the weeds. Just had a quick remove the rake, just get rid of all the chickweeds and all the annuals that seem to just grow, that love the shade underneath the tree. I'm going to add the fertilizer to it, and I'll show you what I'm going to be adding. I like to apply fertilizer to these trees probably once a year, just before flowering. So even now, just coming into July, the flowers should start showing up in the next month or so. This tree is about 10 years old at the moment, so it's at full size, so I'm not trying to make it grow any larger. So I personally try to keep the nitrogen to a minimum. So I still want to give it some nitrogen, but I'll give it something with lower nitrogen than your other fertilizers. I like using chicken manure pellets dynamic lifter. I give it just one container, which I just put around the base of the plant. What I am trying to focus on at the moment is getting more potassium and more phosphorus in the mix. So I add a half a cup of superphosphate and half a cup of potash. And again, I'll be mixing that and spreading it around the base, around the drip line. Now, citrus do need a lot of calcium. Now, you could use dolomite lime, but I do find that that changes the pH of the soil. And I've learned a trick over the years using shell grit, stuff that you feed for the chickens. And I find that I've been using this for the last 4 or 5 years, just adding it to the base of the tree. And what this does is it breaks down slowly and adds that calcium to the soil without the pH changes. Look, it's been working well for me. If you don't have shell grit, use dolomite lime, but don't use too much. But I'll be adding, again, about half a cup of shell grit to the base. And adding in the amendments, just going to sprinkle it gently just around the base of the tree. I try to put some timber edging around to highlight where the base of the tree is, just on the surface like that. And with the shell grit, again, you can be quite generous with it. Just add it around the base, just like that. And on top of that, I like to mulch with either half a bag of cow manure, or in my case, some homemade compost. And I'm going to probably put an equivalent of half a bag across it, so probably 2 container loads. Just going to break it up as a kind of a light, just a surface mulch across the whole drip line. So now I just finished adding that mulch, and you can see it's just an even spread of that compost all the way across the bed, and it's fine. Keeping the soil away from the collar, making sure that that's not in touch with the collar, we'll rot it out. Now, I would normally water this in now, just give it a felt light watering, but the rain that's coming in over the next few days, we're looking at least 100 mil coming in tomorrow, so that should be enough to soak this down. But after that, I'm expecting I'll do this another, probably every year. I may add some fertilizer, depending on how the plant's doing at the end of summer as the fruit's forming up. But I'll be doing this to all my citrus, and I'll be doing that over the next few days. Thank you very much everyone for watching this video. I really appreciate the support. If you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to me in a comment on this video or via my socials in Instagram or TikTok. Thank you again for watching, and I hope to see you in the next one.